Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're learning JavaScript for the first time, maybe you're a student, a new coder, or just curious, today we're going to clear up a super common beginner question. What's the difference between for in and for of in JavaScript? They both look really similar, but they do different jobs. And in this video, we're going to walk through what are the differences and how to use them correctly in JavaScript. Now, the first thing I want to recap on is what exactly a loop is. And we know that a loop is essentially a way to repeat code, usually to go through, a list of items or an object. Here we have an array, and it is a list of colors essentially of red, blue, and green. And we want to loop through this. We want to get it back in the console. And so we can go ahead and do that with a for loop. And, the first one we're going to cover is the for of loop. And we can see that here. So if we go ahead and say node sandbox2, you'll see that we get back red, blue, green in the console. And what's happening is essentially we have that array. We are grabbing each color in the array, so for color of colors. So each color in colors, we want to print it in the console, and that's it. Now you might be asking, this is great and all, but we just learned in a prior video about a for loop. What exactly is the benefit of using it this way versus the way we learned it in the past? It does the same thing. We can see that here. Node, sandbox3, red, blue, green. So what exactly is the benefit? And I want to cover that. So first off, the for of is shorter. So it's more concise. It also, in addition to that, you don't have to worry about indexing, the index of things. So the I variable here, you don't have to worry about that. It's easier to read. It's more human speak versus machine code. It's easier to understand. And there's less chance of making a mistake. You're dealing with an index. You're dealing with, conditions, when to stop it, how to increment it, all of that. It's a bit more complex and more likely to make a mistake or break things. And so the for of can be beneficial for being just more concise. So in general, when you don't need an index, it's often better to just use for of in your JavaScript. Now, I want to go through, before we get to the other sandboxes, is to understand where does this for of and also the for in, which we're going to get to, which is more for objects. Where does it actually come from? So your computer doesn't understand this language, this for of. It can't read that. It only understands like ones and zeros, machine code. All of this code, this JavaScript code, is going to run inside the JavaScript engine. So for Chrome, that's going to be the Chrome V8 engine. For Firefox, another type of browser, that's going to be SpiderMonkey. All of these engines help make JavaScript possible for a computer, a machine to understand. These engines, so in the browser, like Chrome or SpiderMonkey, are going to take your code, whether it's for of anything, console.log, even let, the variables, and translate it to lower level instructions that the computer can understand. And then eventually that's going to become machine code of ones and zeros like we talked about, and it'll tell your CPU, your processor, what exactly to do. And so that's what's going on here. That's why we're, using this. And so what really is happening with this for let colors of colors console.log color is that the JavaScript engine, so in the browser, sees you're looping over an array. It's asking an array for an iterator. This is, built in to JavaScript. So this for of, unlike specifying it here, this is just built in, let color of colors. It's asking for an iterator. It steps through each value in the array, red, blue, and green. And then for each value, it's going to console.log that color, or run this code here. So for of essentially is just a shortcut to tell JavaScript, hey, go through each item in this list one at a time. And it's also going to be the same for the for in, but that's built more for object keys, which we're going to get into. Now we can actually hop into this next example here. And this next example is for in. And we'll see this example here. For let key in user, console.log key, and then console.log user key. Now, the for in is made for objects. And you can think of the difference between for in and for of. kind of like you have colors of a rainbow. So red is a color of the rainbow, right? And then you have, so for of, red of the rainbow, color of the rainbow. And then you have keys in an object. You store keys in an object. So use in is a reference to objects. In of is more of a reference to, of a category of something, like a color of a rainbow, for instance, or a color of an array. That's, kind of that frame of mind you want to think of when you are going through this. Now, for in is going to give back the key, and you'll see those here. These keys are name, age, and is student. User is a variable, but it's assigned to a value of an object, and an object just holds key value pairs. On the left is the key, on the right is the value, and it's separated by a colon, and then each key value pair is separated by a comma within curly braces. And you'll see, compared to prior, an array is brackets. It's not curly braces. So that's the visual difference. And you can use this to, you can use user key to get back the value, and you can just specify key to get back the key. And so we'll see that here. And if we run it in Node, we can say Java sandbox. And you'll see that here. We want to get back the key, so name, and then we'll get back the value, so Lena. And then we have age, and then we have 16, and then we got is student, and then we got true. So it's spitting that key and value one after the other. Now, a common mistake you might find yourself doing, if you're still learning this especially, is you might run something like this. And if you run sandbox 5 here, you have an object and you're running it with for of instead of for in. And that's going to get back an error because it's not working. The JavaScript engine can't process that correctly because it's an object and not an array. So you're using it incorrectly here. Regular objects like so don't work with for of. They only work with for in. And that's why we're getting this error. Now, a way around this, how do we loop through, if you want to loop through both the key and the value in the object, you can use something called Object.entries if you want to, loop similar to what we did prior with an array. And so that's where Object.entries comes in. And we will see that. So if we go node sandbox 6, we get back an array within an array. It essentially bundles up the key and the value into an array, and then it's basically an array, a collection of arrays, an array that has a collection of arrays within it. And these become pairs within that array. And so that is the power of Object.entries, which is essentially just a function you could use. Or more specifically, a method. And a method of the object. Now, in terms of a practical example of all this, let's go to the next one. So we want to use this in action. Let's get a practical example of using for of with Object.entries. So you have an object, and let's say you want to show, so the idea practically, let's say you have a website, and you want to show some settings a user can adjust in the UI, in the user interface. And you want to show these in the UI. So what we have here is an object of settings. We have a loop for of we're using, and because it's an object, we need to essentially turn it into an array. And so what we're doing here is saying Object.entries, and we're turning the settings object into an array with a collection of pairs, which are each an array of key value pairs. And so with this, it's going to get back, if we run this, If this gets back theme dark, notifications true, and font size medium. We're just console.logging this, but you could essentially put this into a UI you're building for a website, an application, something you're working on for the web. You can take this and expand upon it and put this in the client-side facing UI. And this is where you could build that settings panel, display the user preferences, and even if you want to, you could generate this into a dynamic form where someone can adjust their preferences on what they want to see. Now, to wrap up everything we just learned is, think of for of is going to be great for arrays, and it's going to be cleaner and easier than a regular for loop when you don't need the index. For in is for objects, and it's used when you want this keys. And then if you want both keys and values like we're doing here, you're going to want to use Object.entries with for of. JavaScript features like these are just tools built into the language to help you write clear, readable code. And the JavaScript engine does all that hard work of translating everything into real instructions that your computer can run. Now, this is a lot, so if you're new to JavaScript, don't stress. All of this gets easier with more and more practice. In my channel, we have videos exactly like this where we break down these complex topics more simply. So let me know in the comments if there's something specific that you want to be learning, and feel free to like and subscribe as well, as that helps the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.